and act on fiscal year 14 audit acceptance.
Good evening, Mayor and City Commission. My name is Morgan Browning. I'm an audit manager for Accounting and Consulting Group. Roxy Semango, a partner of White Semango and Campbell, asked me to come here and present the results of the fiscal year 2014 audit to you. As you know, our firm merged with White Semango and Campbell in January of 2015, so the time that the audit started and the time that it was released by the state auditors, so there was a merge, there was a change. So that has afforded the opportunity for me to be here. El Paso's a long way to drive to Raton, so we have offices all throughout the state, and I'm from the Albuquerque office. That's where I live and work, and so that was the main reason for me coming up here and speaking with you today. This is really, if you have questions on the merger or anything like that, I'll do my best to address those questions. The presentation today is really a culmination of, it's really the last step in the audit process. It's preceded by the contract award in May of 2014, where you selected White, Semango, and Campbell to be your auditors, and an audit entrance conference that was in October of 2014. The actual audit field work was done mid-late October, and there was an additional week that was done in December. An audit exit conference with management was performed on February 10th, 2015. White, Semango, and Campbell submitted the audit to the Office of the State Auditor on February 15th, 2015, and it was approved by the Office of the State Auditor on April 6th, 2015, and released to the general public on April 15th, 2015, which is why we're able to present the results in a public setting, which is also a requirement by state audit rules. So we're fulfilling a state audit rule requirement today. The audit objectives are, there's threefold. We issue 3 reports. We issue an opinion on the financial statements, on the accuracy of the numbers that are prepared by Michael Ann and her staff, and to produce the financial statements. We opine on those balances and determine whether or not they're free of material misstatement, whether caused by error or fraud. That's our primary audit objective. We also do an audit of major programs, or major federal programs. We did test the airport improvement program this year, and based on our financial statement audit, we also issue a report on internal control and compliance based on our audit of financial statements. That's where the findings come in to the audit. One highlight for fiscal year 2014, for the first time since I went back and looked at the history of Raton's audits, for the first time in fiscal year 2014, the city's audit is getting a clean opinion. It's the highest opinion. It's an unmodified opinion. If you go back and look at all your previous audits, they're all qualified over
15 years.
over capital assets. So that is a remarkable achievement, and I want to acknowledge Michael Ann and her staff for that. I know you guys went through quite a process to achieve that. So kudos to that. That is a significant accomplishment. Like I said, another part of our audit is testing your federal programs. We don't test all your federal programs. We test major programs. We tested your airport improvement program, and we found you were in compliance, and we didn't have any findings or any problems with that program. So good job on that. As far as findings go, you were able to remediate 11 findings. Last year you had about 15 findings. It's down to about 5 findings now. So a lot of findings went away. Of the 5 findings that we have, 4 are repeat findings. 1 is a current year findings. 3 pertain to the City of Raton, and 2 pertain to Raton Public Service. So that's the findings. A pretty remarkable achievement to have 11 prior year findings resolved during the year. So I think over the last 3 years, the trend has always been on the up and up, and it's good to see that. Your findings, I'll just briefly mention them. Well, they were discussed at the audit exit conference with management.
This is page 135.
Oh, yes, if you want to see the findings, they're on page 135. I guess you guys have audit, you guys have copies of the
They
audits.
do,
Okay,
yes.
okay. Well, that page 135, when I say you resolved findings, you can look at that schedule, that section 2 on prior year findings, and you can see that there quite a few of those findings were resolved. And the 4 repeat findings are on this schedule as well on page 135. The first one is capital assets, material weakness. Overall, we issued a clean opinion on capital assets as far as the ending balances go. They had a lot of problems trying to ascertain the balances for the beginning balances. And so for that reason, the finding is repeated for fiscal year 2014. I don't think this finding will be a repeat finding for fiscal year 2015 because we issued a clean opinion on fiscal year 2014. So the balances that are rolling into the fiscal year 2015 audit should be good to go. So I'm thinking that material weakness will go away in the fiscal year 2015 audit. The stale dated check finding. There were 26 checks when we looked at your bank reconciliations with the corresponding dollar amount of $19,263 that were older than a year and have not been canceled. So we call those stale dated checks over a year. If there's significant amounts there, we report that as a finding in the audit. And that's considered a significant deficiency. So within our findings hierarchy, we can have findings that vary in severity. The first one was a material weakness. This finding is considered a significant deficiency. Also, note the 2009-002, the first few numbers of that finding, 2009 is an indication of when that finding first arose. So since 2009, that finding has been repeated. Going back to my first finding, 2002-001, that's when that finding first occurred. So since fiscal year 2002, that finding's been repeated every year. The next finding that's being repeated is finding 2013-001, late audit report. The audit report was due on 12/1, and because of some issues that we had with the schedule of expenditures of federal awards, we weren't able to issue the report until mid-February. So since the audit wasn't turned in on time, we have to issue a late audit finding. And that finding goes back to 2013-001. I'm anticipating that finding to go away simply because we've cleaned up the books, we've cleaned up the capital assets, and I think that we'll have a handle on that. And I don't anticipate a late audit finding in future audits. The next 2 findings have to do with RPS, Raton Public Service. These are repeat findings as well. 2004-005, a capital assets inventory. There was an adjustment in the amount of $304,000. A vehicle that was disposed of during the year was not taken off the books and records, and so that was an error, and so that's what we're reporting as a finding. The new finding pertains to RPS, cash and cash equivalents. There was some restricted cash that pertained to 5 investment accounts, and I believe you purchased some equipment, but the investment stayed on the books somehow. So I'm not really clear on that, but that would be a misstatement in the accounting records, and of course that was corrected through the course of the audit, and so that's being reported as an audit finding as well, and that's considered to be a significant deficiency. So in summary, looking forward into fiscal year 2015, Roxy Semengo, the partner for White Semengo and Campbell, is still going to be the engagement partner. Everything that you considered when you selected them as a firm is still there. She's still going to be the partner. The contract's not going to change. We'll still going to use some of their staff. Juan and the person that did the RPS we'll probably use the same just to preserve that continuity. They've designated me to be the lead manager for that audit. And so I'll have a presence here to help, but that's just looking forward to the fiscal year 2015 audit. I have about 8 years auditing local governments. I do some pretty big municipalities, City of Hobbs, City of Santa Fe, City of Deming. So I have quite a bit of experience auditing municipalities. Like I've referred before, I think your fiscal year 2015 audit opinion will be unmodified. I anticipate a timely submission. I think your material weakness for your capital assets is going to go away. And the late audit finding is going away as well. So as far as the other findings, it will just be dependent on action taken by management. And we'll see what happens. So what questions do you have?
Were we given audit adjustments so that our books will reconcile?
Well, I had the opportunity to speak with Michael Ann an hour before this meeting started, and I introduced myself to her, and we talked a little bit about audit adjustments. She submits to DFA on a cash basis, and that's the books, that's kind of the basis of accounting that's used primarily in trial balance, although I have not looked at her books and records. So I think if that's the way you're comfortable with it, that there's no reason why you should have to switch unless you want. If you want to book all those audit adjustments to make sure your trial balance is in line with the audit, we have clients that do that. But we also have clients that keep their books on a cash basis and adjust to an accrual kind of off book through the course of the audit. So as I get to speak more with Michael Ann and her staff about that, and in terms of what her preferences are, and I'll also speak with Roxy Simango and kind of look at what they did. It just depends on whatever your preference is, and we can make it work, you know.
Well, I'm not asking for accrual adjustments.
Sure.
I'm asking that our inventory, our fixed assets match our general, and match our balance sheet.
Absolutely, and I don't know what kind of conversations, Michael Ann, that you've had with their staff, but one thing we're going to do within the next few weeks is submit a data collection form to the Federal Clearinghouse for your federal audit, and we'll also issue an AUC 260 report, which is a report to those charged with governance. In that report, it's going to have a listing of audit adjustments that were proposed to, for example, the investment accounts that I referred to, taking those off the books,
Right.
things that we found that need to be adjusted. And as far as what adjustments get booked, it's pretty much Michael Ann's prerogative, and we'll offer guidance on that. Certainly anything that hits cash or investments, if that's your basis of accounting, you want to book those adjustments so the audit and the trial balance are in line. But we'll have more discussion on and certainly the fixed assets. As far as the clean opinion goes for fiscal year 2015, it's contingent on those balances agreeing back to the fiscal year 2014 audit. So we can do some review work before we even go out and make sure that those beginning balances are in line, that your cash books, cash-based books are in line with the audited numbers. And so long as the fixed assets and the cash is right, we should be good to go for audit adjustments for fiscal year 2015.
Right, but for, at least for the last 2 years, we've had a note that our, that the figure that the firm that comes up and does our physical inventory does not match our books. So we need to
Okay.
get that straightened out.
Absolutely, it should tie to the audit. The audit should agree to the inventory observation that is done, and absolutely, that's something that we can focus on, is that inventory number and making sure the audit agrees and it's in line with what's reported. Any other questions from this?
One question, I have the two dates, 6/30/15 and 12/15. We will strive to meet those dates. That, by all means, those are the dates that the deadlines for this audit.
Oh, absolutely, and Tim Keller's your new auditor. you want to stay out of the spotlight of Santa Fe, okay? And what that means is you don't have repeat findings and you get your audit in on time. And these are very achievable rules. And I think one of the things he did was extend the due date from 12/1 to 12/15.
12/15.
Yeah, right. And so
Yes.
that'll help us a little bit get the audit in on time and absolutely, and all my audits are in on time and this certainly won't be any exception in looking at City of Raton, so absolutely.
Okay.
We have a budget adjustment in front of us for $16,090.49. That was an increase in the audit expense.
But not to the contracted amount, it's just the way the contracted amount was allocated amongst the three entities.
Okay, so it isn't an increase in your fee. That's what I was concerned
No, we're not
about.
allowed to change
No,
the
I know you're not.
contract
That's what I wanted
amount.
to know.
It's just, the breakdown that they give us for the financial statement preparation for water, RPS, that also includes lodgers, tax, and then the city of Raton, so, there was considerable more hours for this year's audit for the city than water and RPS in the previous years. But the contracted amount was,
It stayed the same. You're just,
$50,650 plus tax. But yeah, that did not change, just the allocation between the three entities.
and the increase in the fee was agreed upon in the contract. Because it's going to 54.
Well, in the contract, they don't break it out. Well, they do by entity, but,
No, I'm talking just the fee. The fee is going, the second year fee.
the second year fee is exactly what was proposed, in their RFP last year. So I think that's the next item, is that what you're talking about?
No, I'm reading here.
Yeah, we're still on acceptance of the fiscal year 14 audit. Year two's fee does go up slightly, but that is already was approved
Was a
as part of
negotiated, yeah.
the multi-year contract. So with tax, year two will not exceed 54,858.
Well, Madam Mayor, I think Commissioner Chavez stated my concern and probably all of the commission's concern. We feel that the city of Raton worked very hard to get our stuff in line, to get the audit prepared on time, and then we were faced with many delays. And I'm glad to hear that you say your audits are turned in on time, so
Yes, I take much pride
I'm
in
gonna
that.
hold you to that.
Absolutely, you should, and you know, it's good to see the trend is up, and it's gonna be a breakthrough year with a clean opinion and an on-time audit. That's what you want.
Because you're well aware that any office that we go to at the Roundhouse during legislature, if you don't have that audit, they don't talk to you.
Absolutely,
They
you're
just
competing for
will-
grants.
For grants or
For anything.
capital outlay money, the first thing they ask you is, how about your audit? Well, we're gonna get it in. Well, the door slams. So, but that's why I'm concerned about those two dates.
Absolutely. I'm certainly talked a lot about coordinating our schedule for fiscal year 2015. We've got a pretty good system that works, and there's a lot that we can do before the books are closed in terms of compliance testing and internal control testing that can really move things up along in the process. So, from talking with Michael Ann, it doesn't appear that you'll have a single audit for fiscal year 2015. So as you recall, the issue with the late audit this year pertained to your schedule of federal awards. So I don't think that'll be a factor for this year. So, all indicators are that this audit will be in on time.
Madam Mayor, I'd make a motion then that we accept the audit as presented.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second to accept the fiscal year 2014 audit. Can we roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Sagata,
Yes.
Commissioner Giacomo,
Yes.
Commissioner Schuster,
Yes.
Commissioner Chavez.
Yes.
Mayor Mans.
Yes. Deliver 2015 Audit Services Recommendation, Accounting and Consulting LLP.
I think we just discussed this with them on this,
Just a little bit.
just a little bit now, so make a motion that we accept that.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to accept the 2014-2015 audit services from Accounting and Consulting LLP. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Chavez.
Yes.
Commissioner Sagata.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Scott, sorry. Commissioner Schuster,
Yes.
Commissioner Giacomo.
Yes.
Mayor Mans.
Yes. Thank you for coming to present the audit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Deliberate and act on consideration of Tiger Grant application, City of Raton Matching Fund Agreement. Mr. Sabo?
Mayor Mans, Commissioners, I appreciate the opportunity to come before you and talk about the possibility of a Tiger Grant for the Amtrak Railroad that would include a project within New Mexico. April the 6th, the federal government released the guidelines and the deadlines to submit for a Tiger Grant application. When that was first released, I contacted Ray Lang as Vice President of Amtrak. He indicated at that point that there would be no work done in New Mexico, would like to see New Mexico get behind and support the application from Garden City, Kansas. Also met with Secretary of Transportation Tom Church and his staff. Their indication was that Burlington Northern had not come forth at that point with what was needed for repairs and maintenance within New Mexico, so they seen no opportunity for a Tiger Grant for New Mexico. Last Thursday afternoon, I was on a conference call with the state of Kansas, Colorado, Burlington Northern, and Amtrak. Things have changed. No longer will the application for the Tiger Grant come from Garden City, Kansas. It is now coming from the city of La Junta, Colorado. They have contracted with a consulting group out of Washington, D.C., Seneca, and the focus on where the work is going to be looked at is also changing. Seneca is proposing a three-state effort to do work in all three states, and what the looking at is a $20 million grant, and 25% of that should be local matching funds. At this point, Amtrak has committed $4 million to matching funds. Burlington Northern is committing $2 million. Kansas Department of Transportation is committing $1 million. Colorado Department of Transportation is committing $1 million. And then they're asking for local communities and counties to also make a contribution. 5 cities in Kansas have pledged $12,500 each. There are now about 10 counties and cities within Colorado that have pledged about $150,000. And what's being requested from New Mexico, from counties and towns along the line, is a match of $12,500 each. And on the call, I asked Burlington Northern that would there be work done in New Mexico, and what would that work be? And they guaranteed that the track in New Mexico would receive attention, and what they would be looking at is replacing ties as the primary for New Mexico. The statement from Burlington Northern was that the New Mexico line is in the best condition in all 3 states. The other 2 states are looking at replacing rail and tie, but for this project, for New Mexico, it will be replacing ties. Because of the change in direction as to where, what states be participating, we've got a very short time frame to make a commitment. The pre-application is due May the 4th. and the final application is due June the 5th. I asked Seneca if there was, do we have to have all of the participants identified by the May 4th deadline? And he said no, as long as all the participants, the final, would have to be in by the final deadline of June the 5th. So the request is for a match of $12,500 from each of the communities. The city of La Junta is the applicant. Their city manager, Rick Klein, will be the lead on the project. Seneca is charging the city of La Junta $48,500 plus expenses for the right, provide the support for the grant application. La Junta is asking for consideration of assistance with the $48,500, looking towards maybe $3,000 from the other entities along the line. Talked with Mr. Klein this afternoon. It looks like there are enough support coming in from different communities that once it's all over, that $3,000 request would probably be lower. The $12,500 for the local matching would only be expended upon successful grant. So if the grant did not go through, then it would not have to put out the $12,500. Anything you put in, would consider putting in to help La Junta, those costs would be. At this point, I've approached Ron Smites as chairman of the New Mexico Highway Commission. He is working with Secretary Tom Church to see if the New Mexico Department of Transportation would be able to make a match. And we've reached out, very preliminary here, talked to Albuquerque, Santa Fe County, city of Santa Fe, San Miguel County, Las Vegas, and we'll be in the next few days reaching out to more. But there is, everybody's got to take it to their governing boards for approval, but there is initially a good reception to it. Colfax County, we didn't have the time to get it on our agenda for action today, but we will be having probably scheduling a special meeting to take it under consideration, and I will be recommending to the county that we do the $12,500.
I'm confused. I thought Kansas and Colorado both received Tiger grants last year. Are these additional Tiger grants?
Yes, this is a new Tiger grant, and last year the application was made in the name of Garden City, Kansas. It did include work in Colorado. This year the grant would be, the applicant would be the city of La Junta, with work being done in all 3 states.
In all 3 states.
And I think the change in focus was primarily with Seneca being involved. Seneca wrote the successful grant application for Garden City, Kansas. They felt like that a second grant in the name of Garden City, Kansas was probably not going to be well received, so they went to La Junta, and trying to expand it out to a 3-state effort would greatly enhance the probability.
We have not completed our budget, and I think we do need to have more knowledge of our budget before we can commit this kind of money. So what's our deadline?
June 5th.
June 5th is the final day for the application to be submitted.
Yeah, so they have to have time to
But
put
they
it
have to
together.
have time to do that, so it would have to be prior, some mid-May or so, I would expect.
Okay.
And I would be recommending to Colfax, this will be built into our next year's budget, and then I'm also including that, if we suggestion to the commission that if we share in the cost with La Junta, that also be in the next fiscal year's budget.
The 12,500 and 3,000?
Yeah,
That's
it's
the
both.
initial request, that's correct. And
But the 3,000 won't be continuous, it'll just be this one-time
it's
fee.
just the
And it may be
one-time.
lower than that.
yeah, it could be lower. Based upon the number of communities that are pledging, it in all likelihood will be lower. Now, I don't know if anybody here is going to attend the NETO meeting in Springer tomorrow, but the city manager, Rick Klein, will be at that meeting talking about the project.
So, Mayor and Commission, I think that what Commissioner Sobel has told you is that for the application, the $3,000 is a hard expense. If the grant application were not accepted, obviously your
You're off the
match
hook for
would
that.
not be needed, and if it were accepted, we have an improvement project which goes a long way to locking down Amtrak, on the line. So, I think the real commitment would be $3,000, and the 12.5 would be contingent upon approval of the application.
Yeah, that's-
And not
that's
every
correct.
community, I believe, is putting in the $3,000. And, some of them are looking at lesser amounts, so that is negotiable.
Okay.
Do we need a motion on this being into consideration?
I think it needs to be brought back after we have our budget.
Now, we do not have a draft budget for you tonight. The work is ongoing. We've anticipated that we'd probably try to schedule a special meeting to talk about the draft budget, and then I don't want to put everyone on, an unreasonable schedule, so I think we need to talk about when that special would be. If it could be held next Tuesday, we would try to set that up, but I think we need to check and see what kind of work is remaining on that. So we would try to get this along to you as quick as we can and talk about it as well as the rest of the budget.
So we could postpone till the next meeting?
Mayor and Commission, I think we have a little time for your consideration on this. I think it's wise that we have a little more information on next year's budget.
Budget.
I would say, on the other hand, that we always knew Tiger Grant is a likely way that the work gets done, so the Southwest Chief comes through Raton. And I think it was always anticipated that we would be asked to put some, or money, or request was at
Right.
some point here, so it seems to be coming now.
Yeah, I think this is something that we all want to continue, and I think if we can get a good look at the numbers, which I'm sure Mr. Berry will provide us. Mr. Sowell, I have no problem pledging my support to this, but I still feel we need to look initially at
Right, I agree.
where it's gonna come from.
Yes, and that's exactly the position the county's in today.
Exactly.
So,
Mr. Sowell, I applaud you for the work. I've noticed you've been working on this for years, and you're doing a fine job for the county and for this area. So appreciate you getting in there in the trenches and fighting with them. So.
Thank you.
And Mayor and Commissioner, I would just reiterate that, I think that the work Commissioner Sobel has done on this is really been beneficial for the entire area. Great information. We probably wouldn't be in the favorable position that we are, except the work of Commissioner Sobel, so I think we really owe
Absolutely.
him more thanks.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Off of this for just a minute.
Got the gavel.
Not got the gavel, yeah. I received a letter from Amtrak about National Train Day, and they've changed the name to Amtrak Train Day, and it's May 9th, which is just, but they said we could choose another date if we wish to participate. And the train will not be coming through Raton like it did last year. But what I would like to do, and I have contacted the Chamber of Commerce to see if they would be of help, is to do a display of the multimodal project, also of the Great Block project, and also have things in there pertaining to Amtrak, and specify a date other than the 9th, because that's coming up too quickly, and then advertise to the community that we're doing a display so everyone will know what's going to happen in that particular area. And the reason that I'd like to do this is because I think it shows continued support for Amtrak remaining in our city. So anybody have any questions or other ideas?
I think that's great.
I'll keep moving on it then. Thank you. Our
So
next,
we need to act on the Tiger Grant application at this point, to just table it until,
Postpone it.
postpone it to whenever you want.
so moved.
No, we have to postpone it to a certain,
The next meeting is
Our
May
next-
12th.
Let's postpone it to the May 12th meeting.
The May 12th.
okay?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to postpone the consideration of the Tiger Grant application, matching funds agreement until May 12th, our next regular meeting. All in favor, say aye.
One question before
Okay.
we vote.
Uh-huh.
Is that gonna be all right, Mr. Sabo, or do you need it by May 4th?
May 4th is the pre-application deadline.
And he said they didn't have to-
Seneca said they do not need 100% of the
Okay.
participants by May 4th.
Okay,
Okay.
all right,
But we will address this at the special meeting next week.
whenever it is.
When you set
Well,
the,
we'll talk about it for the budget, but as far as
Yeah.
moving it,
no, I mean, just for,
I think we need to firm that up, but I think absolutely we would, we're talking about the budget, we would definitely
Sure.
talk about this item.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Create an act on CCJJACB grant 15-690-17245 budget adjustment.
Good evening, mayors, commissioners, city manager, and treasurer. As you see, we have a new form, but the process has not changed. We're towards the end of fiscal year 2014, 2015, and this is the last necessary bar adjustment needed. The reason that we are asking for a decrease in our boys' council is our girls' circle numbers are up. We'd like the funding to go into that program. And along with that also, our boys' council facilitator has moved on to a new career. We wish him the best of success. He did a great job in boys' council. So with increasing girls' circle, we also need an increase into our supplies.
You need an increase to what?
Into supplies
Supplies.
Okay.
for girls' circle.
For the girls' circle.
Well, I'll move that we approve this budget adjustment. And congratulations on good work.
Thank you so much.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the budget adjustment for CCJJACB. All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Deliberate and act on Resolution 2015-13, Budget Adjustment Number 7.
Mayor and Commission, you should have a corrected copy. In visiting with Mayor Pro Tem Sagata earlier, it was brought to my attention that I had an error under sanitation. The amount of the increase or decrease didn't change, it's just the amount in the column that the figure should have changed to. And then I also discovered on page 1, under fire, I had done the same thing for vehicle operating. So that figure should be 31,555, because it was increasing at 10,000. And then under the sanitation, it was increasing the sanitation services 11,000. If we look at the general fund budget adjustments, I did visit with the mayor earlier today. I tried to adjust line items where we knew funds were available. We are currently operating slightly under budget, so we know that we do have some funds available in individual line items that aren't being used. The large increases that we had this year, one we had discussed was the audit expense. The figure that we put in the budget was the figure that we had from, we just carried over the same figure from last year until we started working with White Samaniego and we could get them to give us the breakdown. So, but that wasn't available until probably October is when I got those figures. And then our unemployment insurance, it tends to fluctuate from year to year, and that's a difficult figure for us to budget. And so you'll see that we're actually gonna be closer to $30,000. And so I'm requesting that, we can go down a little bit further. The report that Scott gave you at the last meeting regarding the street improvements, we're proposing to increase the line in contract services under Public Works to cover those street projects for the surface treatment, aggregate, the asphalt emulsion, and the crack sealing hot mix pavement. And then the balance of that, we've already budgeted that towards matching funds on your existing co-op and your maps. So with those matches and that amount, that's the total of the 189,000, whatever, that we have set aside for street improvements. So I made a note at the bottom that, you know, if we take out the 125,341 that I'm asking as an adjustment, then that leaves 8,040 that would technically need to be coming out of our reserve to cover those increased costs, mainly due to the unemployment insurance and the audit expense. I did hear on the radio today that the second half of the property tax is due, so we know that we've got some of those revenues still coming in the month of May, so I'm hoping that maybe that'll exceed what we projected for property tax revenues. And then we'll see where our lodger's tax, our last two checks for the fiscal year come in. We know we're currently at a 4% decrease in GRT, but we still have the May and the June checks, so. So my recommendation would be that we approve the adjustments for the general fund, and then on our fire grants, EMS, and street improvement fund, those were basically just line item adjustments, so we're just shifting money from one line item to the other, with the exception of the EMS fund. I have $4,000 that I was shifting from one line item to another, but then I was also taking the additional miscellaneous revenue. So if you add the 4,000 plus those revenues, it equals the 5,000, 51010. And I think that was the one the mayor and I were looking at earlier.
Actually, it doesn't. 1,000, 2,000, and 1,000 is 4,000, and you've increased the operating expense by $5,510.10.
Right above that, we have
Oh,
additional
I see the miscellaneous
revenue.
income.
So if you add
Okay.
that, then it totals, yeah. So I didn't realize that till we got off the phone, but.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we approve budget adjustment number 7 for the fiscal year 15 with the corrections that are highlighted.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2015-13, Budget Adjustment Number 7 with corrections. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. On Resolution 2005-14, Third Quarter Financial Report.
Mayor and Commission, in your packet this evening, we have the third quarter financial report as of March 31st. This was reviewed with our Financial Advisory Committee at our meeting on April 16th. You'll see on the general fund summary that our ending cash as of March 31st was $991,793.31. And if you deduct your 1/12th reserve and the street improvement GRT reserve, that leaves you an available cash of $425,409.69. Gross receipts received in the month of April is still down just a little over 4%. And I did make a note that the city's 9/12 into the current fiscal year, which is 75% of budget. And overall in the general fund, our expenses are currently at 70.28%. So we're operating below budget. And, you know, we've continued to talk about our gross receipts revenue projection as we go into the next fiscal year. So when we, at our last budget discussion, we had discussed that we'll probably budget a flat increase. We don't anticipate any increases in GRT, especially with the decline that we've seen this year. But based on the anticipated projects that we did present to you, we feel pretty comfortable with those projections, unless something drastic happens in the next 2 months. It's always difficult when you have declines in the latter part of the fiscal year, and then you're kind of trying to make that up in the next fiscal year's budget.
Fellow commissioners, on the very last line under additional notes, as a result, we are discussing budgeting approximately the same for the next fiscal year, possibly lower, to be conservative. It's very admirable, in my opinion. We need to do that.
I think we prefer to be conservative. It's always easier to budget conservatively, and then as you find money throughout the year, then you can allocate those funds accordingly. So I think that's always probably been our approach. And then I provided you with the gross receipts tax history, the cash flow report, and our financial reports and the bank reconciliation. I am attending the DFA budget training on Thursday in Santa Fe with Raton Waterworks and RPS business manager Sandy Chavez, and Geneva Trujillo will be attending also. So we'll be hand delivering our quarterly reports to Santa Fe because our training is in their actual building.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2015-14, 13, third quarter financial report.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve 2015-14 third quarter financial reports. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Deliberate and act on Lodgers Tax Board recommendations.
Madam Mayor, I make a recommendation that we approve the Rogers tax recommendations for April 15th, 2015.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve the Lodgers Tax Board recommendations. Is there any discussion? So $11,000 is coming out what's already budgeted for Parks and Rec, and the remaining 1,000 from the contingency, correct?
That's within the Lodgers tax budget.
Right.
Parks and Rec has a line item.
Who is the New Mexico Community Foundation Fund? What is that?
Is that through Grow Raton?
The Parks and Recreation Department received, or was eligible to receive funds from the New Mexico Community Foundation for improvements around
For the
the
landscape.
Aquatic Center. They needed a fiscal agent, and Grow Raton is holding those funds and will disperse them upon Jared's recommendation.
Okay, and Was there a match? There was a match required?
No.
Okay, then that must just be the estimate of all the work that they want to do. Did the Park and Recs Committee Board approve this?
We didn't have a meeting because of the no quorum.
Just a matter of clarification, shouldn't this be approved by the board and sent to us instead of directly from the director?
Mayor and commission, if you would like that recommendation of the Parks and Rec Board, we can certainly send that to them for their consideration. It would be a recommendation, and it would come back to you in that form, or, if you had them, whatever you would like them to consider. We can certainly accommodate that.
Well, it doesn't make any difference to me. I'm just asking for what is the protocol.
I don't know that it's a hard and fast requirement that the Parks and Rec Board would, it probably would be a typical protocol that they would hear it at their meeting. Apparently there was a quorum issue with organizing that meeting, and I think there's an effort to move projects along, but it might normally be. I don't know that there's really a requirement on you to receive that recommendation.
And the 12,000 is contingent upon Mr. Chatterley providing the breakdown of all the plans too.
Right.
I would note that I did attend the lodger's tax, and their recommendation to you was that the funds be awarded to the project contingent upon
The plans.
details coming back
Right.
to that board. So I don't know where that leaves you to approve or disapprove a contingent recommendation made by Lodgers Tax Board. I think that you would say we approve it, or we'll wait for a final. But it was stated that way at Lodgers Tax, that they recommended in favor of it contingent upon coming back
Right.
with plans. So I guess we could take that to mean that if they have details to work on in these facilities described here, they would continue to work on that till their satisfaction at the Lodgers Tax meeting.
And
Then what would be our, Madam Mayor, recommendation for the commission that 5,000 be awarded to the Country Music Showdown and the balloon rally, and then table the other one until,
we can table it, or there's really nothing, I don't know what to do with this community guide magnet. It's not in their report, but it's in his report.
And I would point out, you have two separate ones, actually three with the Parks and Rec, but you have recommendation on Raton Main Street annual balloon rally, $4,000, and the 5,000 for the country music showdown.
Right. And they're both coming out of the contingency fund.
Right now,
Yeah, no problem with that.
the conversation we had here is we are coming up on the end of the fiscal year, and so, we would commit that or rebudget those carryover funds.
Yeah, it doesn't automatically carry over unless we rebudget. So the country showdown would probably be the only one. I think balloon rally probably would spend their funds by June 30, but I'm not sure about the country
Oh, I see what you're
showdown,
saying.
because it's not till October.
It's not till October, so it goes into the next fiscal year.
Yeah.
And the Parks and Rec items here is obviously gonna take a little work and go back to Lodgers Tax Advisory Board.
I think that should include the city magnet, $708 too, till we get it all at one.
Well, it's not even been recommended. by
It's
the
not been
Lodgers.
recommended.
It's just a recommendation from Mr. Chatterley.
And I'm sure he's gonna have to let those people know
Yeah.
quite quickly.
I recant my motion.
Okay?
Make a new motion that we accept the Lodgers Tax Advisory for the Country Music Showdown and the balloon rally, and table the Lodgers tax on the Raton Parks until such time that we get the message from the board.
Okay?
I have a question. Is that a full board, functioning board, or are they short board members at this
Oh,
time?
Park and Rec?
Well, the Park and Rec Board is short, a lot of members.
Is that part of the problem of the quorum? Getting the
Uh,
quorum?
Not really, there's enough members to make a quorum,
Okay,
but there's like 5 open vacancies for somebody to serve on
That's a lot.
on the Parks and Rec Board.
okay.
I'll second Mr. Chavis's motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept the recommendations of the Lodgers Tax Advisory Board for the $5,000 to be awarded for the Country Music Showdown and $4,000 to be given to the Raton Main Street for the annual balloon rally, both to come from the contingency fund. Also in the motion, it was requested that we postpone the decision on the landscaping, for lack of a better word, for $12,000. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Create an act on consideration for award dumpster bids.
Mayor and Commissioners, if I could preface Mr. Phillips' presentation to you, I would state that the crew has been pretty busy getting out some of the new containers that were purchased previously, and we have made an observation there on how they perform. And so what we see is that a bear that's really dedicated to it can eventually find his way into these containers. And they're not bear-proof, but they're difficult for a bear to get into. And if they want to, because they really have nothing better to do, they're finding their way in there. And so what we do then is make modifications to the containers based on what we see. And so we've got crews in the shop making those modifications now. We've been doing that this week, and those modifications consist of a different handle and a different latch configuration. So we try a different configuration, and the bear spends time trying to work around it. And it's an ongoing thing. But also our observation is that the bears are largely bypassing these new containers and moving down further into town to get easy access
the
to
old
old containers, which are no contest. They're plastic lids, you just flip those up, and it's pretty easy picking. So we're seeing a lot more bear activity further into town, and of course we're deploying the new containers really close to the foothills, 8th Street, 7th Street, 6th Street, Gulf Country Club, those foothill areas where we typically would see the bears first. And so that contest to design these things is still going on. Mr. Phillips has talked to container manufacturers about a true bear-proof container. And, you know, we just have not found an instance where someone will make a true bear-proof container on the scale for the type of system that we operate.
It's the
Because
scale.
we pick up more than 1,000 containers through the week with a side-loading truck. Now, if you look at a true bear-proof container, which you typically would see in a state park or a federal facility, they have a couple of them. A lot of them are largely by hand, and they're not really made to work with the type of system or the number of containers that we have. So a lot of discussion and a lot of work by Mr. Phillips to look into that. And the manufacturer of these really, not to say that we can't come up with a configuration for that, but there's not an off-the-shelf container that we've really
Right.
found. And we have talked to communities like Ruidoso that are in a similar setting. And the containers that we're using now, that's what they're using.
That's what they're using.
And some of the strategies that they've used, we also plan to implement. So it's a lot more than just putting containers out there. So we're working on a couple of those things, but I guess that the public can really help us in, avoiding contact with these bears in these new containers. For one thing, we plan to put a label on the container that notifies you of the day of pickup. And if we can really schedule putting that in there the day of pickup, and other times during the week, there's not so much available waste, or the kind of waste that they go after, they're gonna get discouraged and do something else. Now, we still have bears in town that we have to work with Game and Fish and address this issue, but to discourage them from at least accessing the solid waste. So we've got a couple of things that we're working on there. Just closing the lids is one of the biggest things right now. I would try to point out to the public is they can make a lot of difference by closing the lid. And on these new containers, they have got into them, but they have to work at it, and it's frustrating, and we continue to make modifications. It doesn't do any good if the lid is left open. And we see quite an instance of the lids being left open. We're gonna work on more things, bring them to you, public education. If the public will work with us on evolving the system, we're gonna have some success. But the public is key in making this work. So now Jason's got a report for you on additional containers.
Mayor, Commission, City Manager, we have in front of you this evening for recommendation for award heavy-duty side-load dumpsters. As Mr. Berry discussed, we are not really available to get an off-the-shelf bear-proof dumpster. From the manufacturers we've talked to, it would consist of retooling their assembly line, everything that they generally build as a front-load system, which would entail an entirely different hook system. And we're looking at a cost estimate between $1,900 to $2,500 per unit for something like that. And when you look at the scale of what we need container-wise, that's not real feasible for us to do right now. We have been in touch with Game and Fish. As a matter of fact, since Scott's first day on the job, Robert Osborne from Game and Fish will be here at 2 o'clock tomorrow to look at dumpster 1.0 through 4.0 modifications. He's kind of the same mind that I am, that our best bet is to start with a good container, find a modification that works so that we know it works with our existing system. So he's going to come, we're going to take a look at that, and we're going to try to get a grant through Game and Fish, 75-25 match, to try to move forward with bear-proofing most of town. Game and Fish has expressed a desire to do it one time and have a dramatic effect rather than small piecemeal, but they do want kind of an assurance that these containers are going to work. The gold standards is a U.S. Fish and Wildlife approved dumpster that's grizzly proof, and that's a $2,500 container plus for us. But they do have some optimism, and he's going to bring some ideas. We rolled out the latest variation of our dumpsters today to Turneja and Country Club Drive to try to see, if we can get a little action on them before tomorrow. Those are areas that we've had hit every night in the last 2 weeks. And we're pretty optimistic that we can get a container that makes it pretty frustrating. True bear proof doesn't really lend well to our system. At best, we'll have something that the latch will never open on, and the container will end up in the street from time to time. The bids you have in front of you, we have a single bid. The bidder is Roll Off USA. They are the manufacturer of the current heavy-duty side-load containers that we have. Just to refresh you on that, when I first got here, we did a request for written quotes up to the $60,000 threshold that procurement allowed. We did have 3 firms propose. Roll Off USA was the low quote at that time of those 3, and they are the only response to this bid. To compare the pricing, the container that we had last time was $518.90 a piece. Their current bid is $507 for a 3 cubic yard dumpster. That's our standard large dumpster. We do have a small number of 1.5 cubic yard dumpsters. I've systematically tried to remove those from our system because they're small and easily damaged and rolled into the street. But there are a few spots in town, not many in Bear Country, that we either have some kind of restricted alley width or a retaining wall that we can't really fit a 3-yard dumpster in. So I would like to get a few of those, because we really don't have any to go back with when we pull them. I think it's a fair price. I think it's the container basically that we want to start with before we start tweaking on them. It's a solid box, heavy duty, and they've been holding up pretty well. All of our modifications are something on the lid, and we may actually even propose a change order to do some of the modifications that we've done. They come with a real nice epoxy finish after, you know, a curing time has taken place. We're having to kind of remove some of the handles, drill through that, and repaint it. And we do have factory paint available, but it's not quite up to the same standard as having it painted at the time. And we're probably talking something like $5 a handle to look at something like that. That's the hardware that we're putting on is worth about $2, and we're spending about an hour grinding those two off to get there. So it would just make sense if they'd accept that to do it at the factory. But I would like to recommend that we do accept this bid. They would be bought, as funding allows, in groups of 36 to allow for full value of shipping. That's the arrangement we've had with them in the past.
And Mayor, I make a motion that we accept the proposal as presented.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to award the dumpster contract, for lack of a better word, to Roll Off USA. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Act on consideration for groundwater monitoring proposal, Gordon Environmental. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you. Mayor, Commission, back to back for me on this one. As you know, we are in closure, post-closure stage of the Raton landfill, which means that although we're no longer accepting any solid waste, we do have commitments going forward. One of those commitments is to continue to monitor the groundwater through the use of groundwater monitoring wells at the landfill. You have before you tonight a proposal from Gordon Environmental for a lump sum fee of $23,500 for 1 more year of groundwater monitoring. Their proposal does state that of those fees, approximately $6,000 is the lab testing. The remainder of that goes towards the report submittal and the gentleman to come down and collect the samples. The status of the contract with Gordon is that their services were obtained from request per proposal. It's an annual contract that allows for task orders based on specific tasks. Other tasks that we have with them are preparation of the closure and post-closure plan. This is something that the monitoring itself, we are obligated to do based on the litigative state of the landfill and our current submittal of closure, post-closure. It makes sense to me that we go forward with who we have, you know, at least for this next year, especially until we do get the landfill reclaimed. But I would certainly be open to any suggestion. This is, you know, I believe a fair proposal based upon their pricing structure. And it's something that I would hope going forward, years from now, that we could transition this to more of an in-house or maybe look for a cheaper option going forward. I just really think at the current time and in the current regulatory state that we're in, cheaper isn't necessarily better today.
Mayor and Commission, I would, I think it was well stated by Jason. So we've requested this proposal and bring it to you, and we are giving you our recommendation for award of the proposal for engineering services that you have in front of you.
Was this was put out for bid,
It was
or is this a continuation of the contract?
it's a continuation of the contract, which was a qualifications-based selection process completed, I believe, in 2013, fall of 2013. It is, I believe, eligible for up to 4 annual renewals,
Should be 3.
or 3.
Should be 3, and they should be renewed every year. Okay.
Now, I do not believe we have a current task that, so as part of this, it may include, you know, the renewal of that contract may be something that we want to, you know, look at signing that amendment to get the 1-year coverage on that. This is, a July 1 through June 30th year as far as the monitoring services go, so we do have a little time before our next sampling event, but not.
So this is for next fiscal year.
Well, the monitoring event would occur
You
in
said
the current
June.
fiscal year. It's due at NMED, I think, at the end of June, so
Yeah,
we would need
that's what you
to
told me.
probably mobilize out there, you know, in May, get this done, have the lab work completed. Upon your approval, we'll probably have the samplers up here, well, by next week, and have these samples done.
We'll make a motion to approve the groundwater sampling monitoring by Gordon Environmental.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the proposal for groundwater monitoring by Gordon Environmental. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Schuster,
Yes.
Commissioner Giacomo,
Yes.
Commissioner, oh, I'm sorry, hold on. I already switched my papers, I'm sorry. Back up. Okay, sorry, Commissioner Giacomo made the motion. So Commissioner Giacomo,
Yes.
Commissioner Schuster,
Yes.
Commissioner Chavez.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sagata.
Yes.
Mayor Mintz.
Yes. And this should be, next year we should be putting this out, I believe, for RFP. Deliberate and act on closing agreement accepting educational building located at 100 South First Street. Was tabled at our last meeting.
Mayor and Commission, what you see in your packet is a donation and transfer agreement. This was drafted by Nancy Nieto. She is an attorney with Cuddy and McCarthy, working on behalf of Highlands University. And pretty straightforward agreement that says they are transferring the educational building to the city of Raton. It does talk about a title commitment, and we do have that title commitment in hand currently. So that's been completed. I think the one issue is John Davidson is really on our behalf, talked to Nancy and the Highlands Board of Regents about the procedure here, and I did have an understanding that we would be, they would prepare a special warranty deed, and you do see that it's a quitclaim deed. So I don't know that that's any sort of an issue. It's just something that was brought up by John to Ms. Nieto, and we do have a quitclaim deed. I don't point that out as being an issue that should concern you, but just disclosure. What the process here that Highlands is anticipating is if the city commission approves the agreement, the packet then would go back, as you can see, for approval from the higher education department.
Right.
So we would execute the agreement and then send it back to them, and it would take some period of time.
Right.
Upon them completing that and getting everything filed, then, you know, we've got the cost of the building, the utilities and the insurance on it. So we're anticipating that happening, and then, of course, the Educational Foundation has been meeting regularly and working diligently, I think, to get programs prepared and ready to go in the building. And I've been in the building a couple of times. It's in good shape. It's ready to go. The lights and the heat are on right now. They're covered by Highlands right now. But the building is in very good shape. A lot of the IT equipment that's in there is pretty obsolete, and there's been a discussion with Trinidad State about replacing that. That equipment has been there probably prior to Highlands coming in there, So it's pretty
Sure
old
it is.
stuff, not really usable. But, building's in good shape, a little bit of furniture in there, that's in good shape, it's close to being ready to go.
If TSJC accepts everything and starts classes, will they assume utilities? Or-
It will be, the assumption of utilities will be through the Educational Foundation. They've established a board, and I will be on that, serve on that board. That, their next meeting will be May 18th. But they will be the ones assuming the decision to who to hire as a director and coordinator, and to coordinate with TSJC and possibly other educational institutions, and they will take responsibility of utilities. The one thing they asked of us is that we assume responsibility for insurance on the building.
Now, ultimately, a tenant agreement stating that would come back to you. So we don't have that agreement in place currently, and that's something that we would have to work on. And additionally, this planning for programs, we would hope that, the program is successful and self-funding, basically, that it pays its way. So that didn't happen under Highlands management, but there is some optimism that there could be programs that are specific to us that could pay their way, either tuition or through grants, those kind of things. So looking for grants, that's ongoing as well.
Yeah, I believe that prior to Highlands, when it was under the Educational Foundation originally, it was self-funding and managed itself well.
Do they have a plan as to how this is gonna work? The city will own the building, and it will be jointly operated by the city and Raton Public Schools. Do you know how does that work?
I think the assumption is that the Educational Foundation will provide concurrent enrollment. And that is a situation that a director will have to work on, because if we can't strictly go with TSJC without a state-to-state memorandum of understanding to provide the concurrent enrollment credit. So,
So if we don't have a physics department at the high school or a chemistry department, hopefully they can take it at the educational center. Is that the?
that's the plan. And that's why a director will,
Yeah, have to.
a viable director will have to manage those, because they can also utilize distance learning programs through other facilities. And I believe Luna may be provide some options, as well as Portales and MSU.
Okay, good, okay. Any other questions, discussion?
I'll
Make
make
a- go
I'll
ahead.
make a motion to approve the agreement accepting educational building located at 100 South First Street.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the building, the educational building located at 100 South First Street. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Giacomo?
Yes.
Commissioner Chavez?
Yes.
Commissioner Schuster?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Scott?
Yes.
Mayor Mas?
Yes, motion passes.
Thank you, Mayor and Commission. I would point out that construction on the South Interstate 25 interchange is well underway. I'm not sure what the construction time is on the project, but we would point out that there is gonna be disruption to access to traffic in that area, and, potentially an effect on businesses or accessibility on that south end of town. So, I think the DOT is certainly open to communications on that, the contractor, and we would be available also. And I have talked to some of the businesses on the south end of town about that availability, but that work will be taking place, and it's a good thing. We're happy to see that. I did plan on attending the NITO meeting in Springer in the Northeast Regional Transportation Organization. That's tomorrow morning. So I'll be in Springer a good portion of the day. And then there is a infrastructure capital improvement plan training in Santa Fe. That's on Thursday. And I did set up myself and Jason Phillips to attend that. There's some changes to ICIP plan and submission, how that is done. And how it works right now is you get online and you input things into their program. And so I think there's some improvements to that. It was really hard to function. And so we're going to go down and learn about the improvements and the requirements on ICIP, so I'll be there on Thursday. We are currently asking for bids for some improvements on the Wells Fargo building, and that would, Wells Fargo building is the art gallery located by the depot. So those are budgeted to be paid out of the lodger's tax non-promotional. We have a budget of around $30,000, and we would make improvements to the structure. And specifically, we had a problem with drainage seeping into the crawl space, so we're gonna solve that problem and ventilate that crawl space. So we would anticipate that at the May meeting, we'll bring you those bids on the building and try to get it done in the current fiscal year. I was given this news by Carol Baca in our E911 department, and Carol had applied for funding to upgrade our emergency communication services there, and she was notified that she did receive a grant in the amount of $209,000, and primarily we will be replacing the emergency generator. So if we currently lose power to the building, the E911 is powered by the emergency generator. So I want to say thanks to Carol, $209,600, and that will go to improving our E911 response capabilities, and that's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Our next item of business is closed executive session pursuant to NMSA 10-15-1H, in parentheses 7, litigation landfill lawsuit Mark Van Buskirk and Lori Van Buskirk versus the City of Raton, case number D-809-CV-213-00245.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion, we go into executive session.
Thank you.
Second.
We have to have a roll call vote.
Mayor Pro Tem Scott.